Hello, everyone. This is the One Point Podcast, and I'm Rohit Yadav. Climate tech has emerged as one of the most sought after areas of investment in the venture capital industry. And for a good reason. These startups are essential for addressing the challenges, critical challenges to human survival. However, the path of the climate tech founders is not easy, and many of the founders are frustrated. And the reason being, the path to the fundraising is often not clear, what is required to fundraise, and so on. So today we have Trine Young with us to unveil what it takes to fundraise as a climate tech startup during the early stages. And one of the very important reasons why fundraising for climate tech founders is difficult is because the unique nature of the field. Most of the ideas and innovations are focused on physical solutions, which is atoms and not bits. So this makes things more trickier. Yes. Trina, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
She's a founder of Rodinia Generation, and I was actually really impressed by a unique experience in the background.
Mm.
So you are focused on all things creative. So that's what your background is. You love creativity since your childhood. You love drawing, painting, and you're always drawn to science on how things work, the engineering aspects of things, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And you love fixing things, but you hate cooking. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So I would agree with the last part of what I said. So
Yeah.
I actually hate cooking as well. I thought if there could be like pills in the world where people can just eat and forget about cooking, that would be nice.
Exactly.
But maybe not today.
Not today.
Sorry, Trine, we can go step by step. Could you introduce your startup Rodinia Generation to the audience for us? And please do cover your motivation behind starting the startup and all the kind of important aspects while going through building your startup.
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm the founder of Rodinia Generation, and I basically started the company because I was an extremely frustrated person. I found myself waking up every morning being quite sad about how things work, and basically I used to work in the supply chain of the traditional or conventional fashion industry, and I found out that over 60% of the world's clothing is actually made on the other side of the planet from where it's consumed. And I came to the conclusion, well, why shouldn't it be possible to make clothes anywhere, anytime,
Okay.
and in the exact amounts that we need? Because we actually make 45 billion pieces of clothing every year, which never reaches any consumer at all. So basically, Rodinia is an automated apparel manufacturing system. It can fit roughly into one shipping container, and this patented system is actually able to make trousers, blouses, shirts, dresses, 80% of all clothing categories on just this really small amount of space. And basically, I'm used to say, well, imagine if we had 300, it's just a number of these systems placed all around the planet. You could actually save 42 billion liters of water and 1 million ton of CO2 every year, while still having a multi-billion revenue business.
Okay.
And that's, in my opinion, what it's all about: combining the profit and the environmental conscious aspect of the business.
Awesome. So it's a very tactical business model that you have built, right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start from the really high level, like the climate tech sector and what you think about it, right? So what do you feel about the climate tech investing right now, and how has it developed in the last, let's say, 2 to 3 years in the ecosystem?
Yeah. So maybe if we start with going back,
Yeah.
I think we need to go maybe 7-8 years back. And I was actually visiting the Danish Fashion Institute, which is today called the Global Fashion Agenda. And they wanted to show me some collections by designers who made things from fish skin, food waste, and so on. And basically, this guy tells me, yes, as you can see, it does not look very good.
Okay.
It looks very, very sustainable.
Okay.
And I think what has changed today is that the notion of what was sustainable back then actually had a specific label. So we had to choose whether or not it was sustainable, whether or not it was, an actual product that you would like to buy. And I think today we have these two opposites, which it was only like 7-8 years ago, now actually merged together. So in regards to climate tech, I think the same thing happened.
Mhm.
Before, it was more like if you invested in climate tech or impact, it was more like a philanthropy kind of
Yeah.
thing. And today, I think that it has changed a lot. Now people are investing in climate tech because they are sure that this is going to be where the returns will also come in the future, because we need to make these new innovations. So regarding the investing market in climate tech, I think it's it's like with every other market, investing market these days. It's tough. I have a feeling that it still is growing.
Yeah.
However, it could not grow as much as it, in my opinion, it should. But in general, investing markets these days are tough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And where do you see, or where do you foresee, let's say, if you have to make a prognosis for 2025 and maybe a couple of years down the line in general for climate tech?
Oh, that's a tough one. 4 years or 5 years. I mean, now we had a situation, right? Or we have a situation with, unfortunately, the Paris Agreement, a big nation, pulling itself out of that. We are
Yeah.
all running towards the same goal, but now we have someone who don't want to participate. I think that's a serious step back, just in general for the climate, not even for tech, just for the climate in general.
Okay.
So for the next 5-6 years, I foresee it's going to be tough. I hope that it might also boost some counter reaction to this, actually, that people will say, no, we now need to boost all the great innovations that are out there so that we don't stall the development because of a political decision.
Okay. So the way I see it is probably US versus kind of Europe story, right? So if one country or one nation has taken a step back, I think climate tech within European space is still pushing ahead to a larger degree. That's what I say. That's what I see in the market. And there is a lot of tripod there. There are a lot of VCs who are still excited. Then the second question comes of how good, well developed the startups are. Are they fundable or not? So that's kind of a separate question. But I agree to what you said to a larger degree. So if you have to choose one hot climate tech investment area apart from your own startup area where you are, what would it be and why?
Yeah, I think the obvious question, and I think if we just park it and say we all agree that the energy sector, right, is very important. The energy sector is going to fuel the startups of the future. So if we can agree on that, I think one other aspect or one second hot topic, in my opinion, basically, I'm looking into manufacturing, and that's because we have industries today that we still need to, we cannot not just wipe them off the table. We need industries like food, like consumer goods, like clothing, for example, and textiles. And we really need to rethink the way that we make these things, and that's in manufacturing. So I'm foreseeing that that automated AI/data driven manufacturing will be very huge. So this is the sector that I would feel drawn to.
I mean, you're right on target. So for the season one, I focused on climate tech for the podcast, and for the season two, I'm focusing on manufacturing. So exactly the way I see things is that manufacturing is like becoming super critical. Awesome. Glad to hear your thoughts on this. I want to switch to the fundraising topic, and that's the most critical topic because that's the focus area of this podcast. We want to bring value add to the ecosystem by your thoughts on how you were able to raise and if there were kind of challenges that you faced on, and if there are some feedback and advice that you can provide to other founders and make their journey a little bit easier. That would be nice, right? So tell us about your startup's fundraising journey. Where do you stand right now? Where did you started? How long has it been going? And then we can move on to the other questions.
Yes, I mean, we are right now in a seed stage. We have been through what I would call the standard process. We started out with the soft funding grants. Then we moved to a handful of business angels. And then we also have some debt financing because we have hardware. So we were able to do that.
Okay.
And then also recently, we just had our first VC investors joining in a seed round. So this is where we are.
Okay. So the initial grant stage, can you elaborate like how big they were? If it's like common knowledge,
Yeah.
Feel free to.
Yeah, so in total we have 0.6 or 600,000 euros in grants. And the reason that has been extremely important in the first stage of the company is actually two things. So the first one is that you are able to try out your idea. I mean, typically when you build climate tech, You have quite a lot of equipment. That's also why some call it hard tech.
Yeah.
And basically, you need to build something to demonstrate or to try out, is this actually going to work? So you need some capital up front, actually. And for that, grants are a very are a less risky way of testing out your idea. So in our case, we were able to build the first MVP of a genetic algorithm that basically were able to merge many different kinds of designs in seconds. And that was a groundbreaking ability in the apparel manufacturing industry, because today, we mass produce, or we make 10,000s of, let's say, t-shirts. You cannot make simultaneously many different designs. It's not possible. So this was a groundbreaking thing. So we thought, okay, now we have something. We're able to actually move forward to actual investors. The second part, obviously, is that if you do see that you have something unique, you're also able to create your first IP here. So you can also think about patenting some of it, and those patents will actually help you drive valuation later on in your investment.
Okay. So typically I ask this question later on in the podcast, but I want to take it up from, because you mentioned grants, right? How difficult is it to get grants? I mean, I know I've heard founders saying it's not easy. It's a process. It lasts like 2-3 months, 6 months for some founders. How difficult has it been for you? And if there's some advice that you would like to give specifically regarding grants on how things can be easier.
Yes, well, I think it really depends on what grant you're applying for. In Denmark, where we are, we have something called Innovationsfonden, the Innovation Fund of Denmark, and they have different programs. You do need, obviously, to be quite good at writing. In my opinion, you really need to be able to communicate clearly on paper what it is that you are building and why. That counts for all the grants that we have applied for as well. The European Commission also have this very competitive accelerator program, and that's another story that requires some external help to write these grants. But for the Innovation Fund grants, I actually wrote those applications, and we have had it for 4 times now. And so it really depends on whether or not you're able to do that yourself, or you feel you need writing skills from somewhere else.
Okay. And so do you think that the kind of knowledge which is out there in the internet, anybody who's probably not good in writing or maybe needs some bit of help, they are able to look it up and be able to do that and win the grant as a founder? Do you think that the ecosystem knowledge is good enough out there?
Yes, I think actually it is, and I think also these external consultants are actually also quite good, or sometimes aggressive, even to fetch you and grab you and say, do you need any help? Because we have consultants that are specialized in this and this and this program. And in our case, we've had the luxury to say, no, we don't need that. But for the European applications, we did actually have a consultant.
This professional kind of
Yes.
support system.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Coming back to the fundraising, can you explain to us in detail, maybe you can use some numbers around it? What did your funnel look like? Maybe you approached, like, I don't know, like 10 investors, and then it followed up with 2 or 3 meetings and so on. So do you have some numbers which can help other founders to understand how difficult or easy it is?
Yes, obviously, I think everyone knows that you need to meet a lot of investors. And I think especially in the early stages, I actually would kind of describe it a little bit as speed dating. You basically have an unrealistic amount of time to decide if you want to get married to this person that you meet, and you probably meet around 100. And in my case, I think it was a little over 100 different investors that I actually met with in the early days. Yeah, so it's hard, and you really need to be clear what it is that you're looking for.
And so, as I understood correctly, the professional investors, in this case, I would say venture capitalists, so they came in the seed round for you, right? So the initial round was just grants and maybe some kind of debt financing. Is it right?
And business angels, yes.
Business angels. So
Yeah.
so what were their key questions that they asked you? What were their reasons for them rejecting you?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think actually one specific example, I actually, the first pitch I ever did, I basically more or less only had a PowerPoint slide, and I went into a room with a very large stage, in my opinion, and there was I don't know, maybe 60 gray haired guys in black suits.
Wow.
And I was thinking, I'm pitching fashion and sustainability right now.
Okay.
That's going to be a tough one. And I had 5 minutes to do that. And I knew that the microphone would be switched off after 5 minutes. So I basically said, okay, let's take this challenge on. We'll do it. 5 minutes. Almost a mic drop, right?
Okay.
Let's see what happened. And what was quite interesting was that these people actually seem to understand the business potential in this. And so afterwards, a lot of these people came, and then we arranged meetings, so one-on-ones. And that's actually how the business angel, how do you say? Yes,
Yeah, okay.
started for me.
Okay.
And there I met a lot of people. And I also, to be honest, I think as a founder, you also have to be picky yourself. You need to also think about, do you want to get married with anyone? No, you don't. So you have to be clear about if there isn't any personal it can be a perfect match on the paper, but if you cannot really seem to work together as human beings, it's a no-go already. So I also had someone that I said, I don't think we're a good match.
Okay.
I like your values, but I don't think on a personal human level that it will work out. Others then said to me also, yeah, well, the thing I've heard most is, yeah, it's your pre-revenue.
Okay.
So we don't do that. The other thing I heard a lot was, it's hard tech. There's equipment, there's machines, there's capex. We don't do that. That's too risky. And I actually also had a business angel who told me that I should go and find a male co-founder, and
Okay.
then everything would be good.
Okay.
So there has been a lot of very interesting rejection reasons.
So huge kind of variety of reasons, right? And I
Yes.
want to switch now. So this was the business angel side. So I can understand from business angel perspective, typically they can like mention these kind of revenue and hard tech, because not all business angels understand hard tech, to be really honest with you. What happened at the seed stage then? Right. So what was, because VCs are supposed to understand how to invest in climate tech, because that's why they are there, right?
Yes.
So if they kind of rejected you or things didn't work out during one or two conversations, like what was the reasoning behind it? And how did your process over there at the C stage look like?
Yes. I think definitely the most often rejection reason back then was that it's hard for us to understand your entire product, because we both have software and we also have hardware.
Okay.
There is in my opinion, there is some kind of fear for some VCs, and sometimes it's not even in their strategy to do it, but they don't want to invest in something where you front load the risk with capex investments. And I can maybe explain it a little bit with, for example, the sewing machine was invented in the 16th century, right? And back then you usually sew by hand, one stitch at a time. Now imagine that someone came and said to you, I can actually give you an option to not stitch by hand. You can now stitch with a machine, and it's 10 times faster than what you're doing now. And then back then, you can just imagine people say, what? No. Okay, I will see it before I believe it. And the person here would then have to say, okay, then I have to build it. And then also fingers crossed that when I build it, it actually will work as I tell you it will work. So I think that at some point in hard tech and climate tech, because we're basically building something that doesn't exist, you need to get away from the fear of investing in the notion that build it and they will come. I mean, if no one built the sewing machine, it wouldn't have existed. So someone needs to take that risk and say, okay, we will build it, and then we do believe that people will come and use it afterwards.
And from your side, is there kind of a advice to unlock this fear among investors, especially VCs, of investing in hard tech? What can founders do better? I know there's pitching, there's product and so on. Do you think there's a combination that founders can utilize, and it might be much easier to unlock investments from VC?
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely getting some experts to look at the numbers, especially around assets, right? And also these days, quite interesting options actually to finance equipment.
Okay, got it.
So I would definitely say get the numbers looked after very thoroughly by someone who has used to looking at assets and
So kind of
financing that.
foolproofing this business plan, right?
Yes.
So that it gives more comfort to the VCs. Got it. Apart from this fundraising is challenging for all the founders. Fundraising is challenging for even for VCs who are raising from limited partners, to be honest. So apart from this fundraising, do you see any other challenges that you face as a founder?
Yes, I think you always face the lack of resources basically. I mean, from a personal point of view,
From talent perspective, from
yes, it could be from talent perspective. Also, you need to bring someone in that can also help you with the aspects that you're not very strong in yourself. Because as a founder, you cannot be strong. You're wearing the whole hat collection, right? The CEO, CFO, CMO, CS, whatever you
Yeah.
want to call it. So I think that it's been challenging to fulfill 100% in all those hats. So basically, I think all founders would agree that as soon as possible, you will need to have specialists joining your forces so you can, especially the due diligence process, which
Okay.
can be very tough.
Okay, and so what's your talent strategy? So what's your talent motto
Yes.
at Rodinia Generation?
If I understand your question correctly, I basically go from the saying that what I know that I'm not strong in myself, I
Okay.
will collect that talent somewhere else. And I'm quite obsessed with actually doing these strengths and weaknesses on myself, because in startup world everything goes really fast. You learn new skills all the time, so it's quite important. It helps a lot to make that chart, every once in a while on yourself and say, okay, I'm actually now advancing in this spot, but I can see that I lack more talent here, the skills that I don't have, and that actually helps to acquire and map out where are the potential risks in regards to not having the required specialists.
So it's more about kind of complementary skill set.
Yes,
That's
yes.
what you're looking for. Can you tell us more about your first senior executive or CXO kind of hire that you hired within your company, and why I did that, and kind of how did you go about it?
Yeah. So I think obviously from everyone can see I'm a fashion designer by background, right? So I used to say I'm a fashion designer turned tech entrepreneur, but I'm not by background a software engineer or mechatronics engineer or anything like that. So very quickly, that was a big gap on my chart. So I had a search in my network. I've always believed that if you know someone who knows someone who knows someone, there's already some kind of validation of this person. So I was very lucky to get a hold of our existing CTO, and he was also in that position that he was actually looking for something else. So it was quite a lucky strike, and we met, and it seemed like a very good match. And again, the speed dating, you need to assess everything, and then we brought him on board first, not as a CTO, but as a head of of software and development, which then later on went to a CTO position.
So your kind of evaluation spectrum is all about skill set, whether there's a gap and where you can fulfill that gap.
Yes.
That's it. Makes sense. Any good fundraising tips or ideas that you have heard from other founders that landed them fundraising that you would like to share with the founders on the podcast?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one. I think that one very important advice I got a long time ago now actually was that if you then feel that during your speed dating there's an actual match and it comes to an actual proposal, then really do your own research, call some of the portfolio companies and get a reference, because you never know. I mean, they have been married to the person that you're now trying to get married to. Has it been a happy marriage for others? It's a very, very good validation point to get a second and maybe even a third opinion.
Okay.
So reach out to also the portfolio companies of the VCs that you believe that you are going to marry.
Makes sense, but I would add to this. So it's not just about one or two contact references of founders. I think contact more, because one or two could be like really biased. I mean, it's kind of lucky hinge as well that you reach to somebody who probably did not have such a good feedback. And the idea is to have, if you don't have good feedback from both the sides, from the VC side and the portfolio side, and then you reach to a portfolio founder who probably is not happy with the VC, then it doesn't make sense as well, because there's something behind the scene that we don't know exactly.
Yes.
If founders want to go through that route, I would really suggest reach to more portfolio
Yes.
founders than less.
Yes.
For sure.
I mean, another way to validate it can also be to not be as direct in the questions, but basically ask questions that are quite open and see if there are red threads between what the two parties are saying. And that can also be a validation somehow if the stories make sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Awesome. Yours is a hard tech startup within the climate tech space. Do you really see a big difference between founders who are doing soft tech related climate tech versus hard tech with respect to fundraising, with respect to the ease of building their startup, all those parameters?
Yes, if there are any difference between, yes, for sure. Again, I think in my case, so Rodinia is a hybrid. So I think in the future also we will see more hybrid climate tech companies that are both software and hardware. We used to call it that the software is the brain that controls the body, which is the machinery. But for sure, I think that there has been a historical development in the sense that software was once where we wanted, or where investors wanted to bet their money.
Sure.
Because it was the risk was back end loaded and not front loaded like it is today with hard tech. As I also explained, with machinery and so on, you need quite some amount of money upfront to basically ensure that you can get started and build the sewing machine and demonstrate that it actually works as you think.
So there's definitely a difference with respect to fundraising and all the kind of common scenarios that we would think of, right?
Yeah.
Okay, I want to move towards more of a personal side. And how do you motivate yourself? There must have been tons of challenging days, right? Because you're a founder. How do you keep yourself motivated?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually I want to highlight a specific book.
Okay.
That that I actually has helped me a lot during tough days. It's called The Daily Stoic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you know it?
Yes.
Yes. It's very good because each day has a page, right?
Yes.
It's very fast, so we are very busy, so it's there's not a lot of text. You can very easily read it. It's Plato, Marcus Aurelius, all those guys that basically are painting the broader picture, and you kind of understand that these issues has been around, with humanity for forever. So you it kind of helps you to cope with the fact that okay, this is not unique for me. It's something that everyone experiences or has experienced.
Okay.
That's the one thing, and the other thing is that I also sometimes use the rough days as fuel. And I think that that's something that is very important to, if you can, turn it into fuel instead of, dragging you down. It kind of gives you that sense of, okay, I lost this competition, for example, or this wasn't the right decision to make. Well, it's a tough day. I will actually use it to stand up stronger. So basically, use it as for something positive.
I love the idea of the book. What has been the role of advisors, mentors within your journey, especially the very early phase of building your startup, right? You're coming from more of a designer perspective, right? This is your first startup, if I'm correct?
Yes.
So there must be like tens of questions in your heads on how to do this and that. How did advisors help you in navigating through that early phase of your journey?
Yeah. Yes, I think that so I have actually been quite happy with reaching out to everyone. I don't have any, problem with saying to someone, I'm not an expert in this. I don't know how this works. Can you help me? I can see that you're an expert. Please teach me something I don't know. So I think in that phase, there's actually a lot of people in the startup ecosystem that are experts in that and that are willing to help and say, okay, yes, I know you're looking into machines. There's some financing here that we need to discuss quite early on. If you don't have those numbers right, then no investors will touch this. Okay. All of these things has been extremely helpful to actually build the business case. And I think that there are two groups of advisors as mentors that I have been very fond of. And the one group are the people that emphasizes your strengths, that tells you, great, that this writing for the application is really good. And then there's the other group that actually addresses your weaknesses. And they also do that in a proactive way. They say, okay, this is not your greatest strength. Maybe try and do this, or maybe I'll point you in the direction to this guy or this girl that can actually do what you cannot. And I think you need both types. You are actually in control of who you are going to talk to. So I've used it quite actively to balance out also the mental aspects of tough days that you just asked me.
Okay.
Because you cannot control things that goes wrong, but you can control who you talk to about it.
Makes sense.
So that I have been very, very happy with.
Some founders say that it's been tough for them to get the right mentors or advisors. What suggestion would you have for them?
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
That it is definitely tough. Again, it seems like I'm very happy with this speed dating scenario, but again, it is, a sense of getting a very quick sense of the other person. Is there a personal match? Is there chemistry? If there isn't, I would move away very quickly because it's a waste of your time. If you don't feel instantly that this is a person you can communicate with, it's a person who understands your point of view or maybe even challenges your point of view in a constructive way, don't waste your time. Just move on. Yeah. So yeah. So
I mean, the bigger question is like, how do you find those advisors,
yes,
right?
I was going to, yeah.
Because it's kind of a funnel system in,
Yeah.
in that sense, right? So you would be really lucky to find the right advisor as a first advisor that you talk to. So how did you found all your advisors? First question is that. And obviously drilling down, you already explained, whether it's kind of a match between the thought process, the vibe, and so on.
Yeah. I found, the advices that we have used has been through network. So basically calling up someone saying, I'm looking for this person. Do you have that in your network? And then that person called someone else and said, yes, I have these 5 people that you can talk to. So it's basically been, I feel maybe we are a little privileged in that sense that we can actually, call someone and they're very helpful in getting someone into the room that says, okay, I can do this. Is that what you're looking for? Yes, it is. Or no, it isn't. I think in regards to the competitions and pitch sessions that I also took part in quite early on, has been also has been driving an organic kind of process with people who also contact Rodinia and say, is there anything I can help you with? I'm really good at this XYZ.
Got it. And since you mentioned this kind of competitions and so on, what has the role of these pitch competitions been? So were they helpful to make your pitch better? Were they helpful to you to find the business angels? Were they helpful for you to find the advisors? Like paint a picture on how important those kind of events are in general, pitch competitions, including and other networking events.
Yes, I really think that they are super important, those pitch events and also those basically startup events like Slush or even the Drop and so on, because you go there with an open mind and you basically talk to someone at the coffee machine and someone says, oh, what are you doing? And you're telling them, obviously, and they say, okay, I'm doing this, maybe there is a match. So it's really important to be quite active in the ecosystem of startups in the startup world and participate in all of these things. Yeah, and it basically also gives you a sense of reality check. Is your startup actually something special? Or do you meet 5 other people at the coffee bar who's dreaming of doing the same thing?
Some founders say that, it's, I don't want to use the word waste of time, but it's kind of extension of their abilities, of their energy, if they're just going into such events and not getting the full kind of benefit out of it. And I can imagine that, going to event after event, and as a founder, what you should be focused on building. Networking is also important, but you should also be focused on building. So how do you kind of balance those two sides?
Yes, that's a super, super good question. And I think it's the way that I have balanced it has been if I have specific meetings, if I can get specific meetings at the actual events, I will go there. Yeah. If I don't have anything, I will not just go there and hang out. I don't have time for that. So that should definitely that has been the way that I have approached these events.
So there should be some tactical element attached to it, whether it's meeting, whether you're pitching, for example, and so on. Okay, and there should be kind of a goal in your mindset, right? So I'm going there to kind of meet or find my new advisor in this area. Okay, got it. Did you use any fundraising consultants in your journey?
At all? Also for grants and so on?
Grants, yes, you kind of explained, but in general, kind of, reaching out to VCs or maybe you did not and you heard somebody in the ecosystem who might have used them. And if you can tell, like, what has their experience or what your experience has been.
Yes, I think that so from my experience, we actually didn't work with external consultants in the sense of consultants that we paid a fee, but I think we have been quite fortunate to assemble a board of directors where we have those skill sets in the board. Someone who used to fundraise, also someone who used to be a serial entrepreneur, and so on. So all these skill sets are quite important to get in a boardroom. And from what I've heard from other founders, it can sometimes also be a little bit of a jungle to go out there and see if you can find consultants that are specified in particularly what it is that you're looking for. So I think my advice here would be it can be cheaper to assemble a board instead of bringing in consultants that are very expensive. So maybe see if you can find in your network the skill sets that you need to actually fundraise.
And by both, you mean not the VCs or not the investors who come on your board, but rather kind of independent folks. Maybe you have 10 advisors and you ask a couple of advisors from within those group to come as a board member, right? So this is what you meant by.
Yeah, I think there's a difference there, right? So someone is great to have as on the advisory board, and someone is very needed in the actual boardroom as a board of directors. And I think obviously you in the startup world you need to have. It's very rare that you don't have your VCs in your boardroom, but I think it's also quite important that you have someone that are non-part. What do you say? That doesn't have any interest on either part. That don't have shares in the company. That are looking at it from an objective angle, and that person or those people should be quite skilled in the areas that you as a founder are not.
Okay. And so how did you decide to bring somebody on board who was not your investor?
Yeah, so I think we were in this funding round for the seed, bring in VCs, and I said, okay, I haven't done that before. My experience was only with grants and business angels. So I said I need someone who is quite experienced in that. And I met previously a partner in a hard tech, or you can say that a hard tech VC fund. And I heard that he was looking for new opportunities and challenges. And then I basically gave him a call and I said, do you remember me? We met back in the days. And he said, oh yeah, I remember you. And the rejection reason again was, oh, you're too early for us. But then he said, okay, now it sounds like you're not anymore. And it's interesting. I remember your company and I would like to have a coffee. So we met and he said, okay, that's interesting. Please let me know if I can help you with anything. And obviously there was this thing. We are going into a funding round now. It's VC money that we go after. Do you think it's the right money that we go after? Or what do you think? And he said, yes, I believe this is a VC case. Let's work together.
Okay. That worked out so perfectly for you, right? So touch wood, it keeps on working out well, right? Awesome. We're almost through. I want to kind of take a step back and just discuss in this one last question about the ecosystem overall and whether you see that the government agencies or be it any kind of other agencies that can support the ecosystem much more. So before even you go over there, like the first question is like, do you see there's a gap on how the ecosystem is supported right now within the climate space in Europe in general? And if there's a gap, probably how would you expect it to be fulfilled? And third would be, do you expect the government should be doing much more in supporting startups? Specifically, these kind of hybrid hard tech startups, which are kind of front loaded and require a lot of capital upfront.
Yes, I think in Europe in particular, with the EIC and so on, that we're pretty, we have opportunities here, first of all. That's on the positive note.
Yeah.
And I do see that their programs are extremely important for the innovation environment in general for the European economy. The gap, I believe, is bureaucracy. So when you're doing ESG and when you want to change things, now there is a very high level of reporting requirements. And I fear that we spend all our time reporting and don't do actual concrete tangible results. I would actually, what will be nice obviously is to see government action like France, for example. France had a very interesting suggestion about adding a fee on top of all low-cost, cheap products that came into the country. So basically, just a minor fee like 0.5 euros on top of each garment from Shein will destroy that business model. So in that sense, you kind of make limitations cleverly that has a very immediate effect, right? Because adding that fee, no garments will ever be sold from Shein in France. So I think that is a very good example of how you can make concrete action from a governmental perspective that has
I mean, this is very focused on your business area. If you have to expand and look to the climate tech in general,
Yes.
like, do you think that governments can probably do more with it? It could be like grants, more grants, I don't know, debt facilities, like should there be a government VC fund, something of the sort?
Yes.
Should it be easier to kind of form startups, less bureaucracy, everything of that sort? So what are your thoughts on this?
Yes, for sure. I think that in general, now we also have been discussing in forums with other hard tech startups,
Yeah.
and it's very clear that in Denmark we are quite privileged in the fact that we have IFO, the European Export and sorry, not the European, the Danish Export and Investment Fund, because they actually have programs on how to finance asset heavy companies in the
Okay.
early stages. But when I speak to startups and founders in Spain or Portugal or other European countries, they don't have this governmental body. So they need to find it somewhere else, like banks. And obviously, banks do not want to take that risk early on. So yes, I think that that's where perhaps the European Union, maybe even the European Innovation Council, right, could say, okay, we're taking risks here because no one else wants to do that. But it is already what is going on in for example, the accelerator program, but it's just so competitive that it's super hard to get through, and it takes around 6 months before you will actually go through the entire application phase.
Okay.
And that's a long time for a startup.
But let's focus on accelerators since you mentioned, right? So do you see advantage in joining accelerators for hard tech or kind of hybrid startups and so on? Do you think that those startups, climate tech startups, should actually be going through such accelerators within the system? Did you go through any accelerator?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Actually. We didn't go for any accelerator.
Because you mentioned the 6 months phase and so on, right? So
Yes.
can you elaborate on this point?
Yes, I think so. So that's actually a specific program under the European Union that takes around 6 months from the first application. Then there's a second step, and then there's an interview phase, and then you have to wait for the actual result. I think for the accelerators that you mentioned that are more or less incubators, you could say, right? I think for climate tech companies, there would be some sparring there with other companies who has similar front-loaded company risks that could maybe form some kind of alliance where you can actually learn from each other, like what have you done. For example, when I shared that in Denmark we have this opportunity of debt financing, there was some I think it was some eye-opener.
Got it. We are true. So in the end, I always ask about one interesting, inspirational idea that you might have heard or read in the ecosystem that you would like to share with the audience. Any other piece of advice? Go ahead.
And it can be anything. Okay. Yes, I'm actually right now I'm fascinated by a Japanese manga.
Okay.
Yes, and there is a quote from the main character there, and it's very basic, it's very simple, but I kind of like it. It keeps the motivation up. It goes like this: if you find yourself on a path that feels easy, it's probably because you're on the wrong path. And I think that's actually quite a good saying. The manga series is called One Piece.
One Piece,
maybe
okay.
You know it. Yes, and I think it's quite inspirational.
Definitely would love to quote in the podcast and give a link to everybody. Trine, thank you so much for joining us. It was fabulous that you could join. You're based in Denmark, and I love the whole story of how you're building Rodinia Generation. And I'm sure there are a lot of insights specifically related to, founders, hiring, Cs, and how to get advisors and so on. So there are a lot of learnings that other founders can take and learn from your journey. So thank you so much for joining in.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much.